Hello and welcome to the DisruptAbility Podcast presented by Inclusive Cork. Today's interview is with Toby Mildon, who is a diversity and inclusion specialist based in the UK. Toby helps companies to be more inclusive of the diverse talent pool. He has formerly worked with Deloitte and the BBC. And today's interview, he will give some really good insights into diversity and inclusion, especially for companies who are starting out on their inclusion journey. Thank you for listening. And so today I'm really happy to be talking virtually to Toby Mildon, who is a diversity and inclusion architect. And we are talking all the way from London, isn't that right? Is that where you're based, Toby?
Yeah. That's right, yeah, I'm in London, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, we're delighted to have you here in Cork with us today.
Cool. Thank you very much, thanks.
Yeah, so Toby, can you give us a little bit of your background, where you're coming from and how you got into the whole diversity and inclusion business?
Yeah, I got into diversity and inclusion when I was working for the BBC. Mm-hmm. I'd spent many years working in technology as a project manager. And when I was working at the BBC, I was working with the chief operating officer who was concerned about the gender imbalance within the technology department of the BBC. And we were very different to the rest of the organization, which is about 50-50 male-female. And so with Andy, I created the Gender Balance Action Plan. And then as a project manager, I implemented the plan. And but then my portfolio grew. So I worked in radio. I worked with all of the corporate services of the BBC, like finance and marketing and HR. And then I moved into the city, working for Deloitte as a diversity and inclusion manager.
Okay, so you kind of left the technical world and went into the diversity and inclusion world.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then since Deloitte, I left the city and I've set up my own diversity and inclusion consultancy, working with my own clients now. Okay,
so what do you offer your clients?
So I mainly work with HR directors and senior business leaders to help them hardwire diversity and inclusion into their culture and their business infrastructure. I do that through a number of ways. I've got a flagship program that I take my clients through that enables them to hardwire it into their business. I then do bespoke consultancy work for my clients. I do training. For example, I'm doing unconscious bias training at the moment for Sony. And I run training workshops that are largely bespoke to meet my client needs.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about unconscious bias? Because people are hearing about it, but what does that mean?
Yeah, unconscious bias is a really popular term. I suppose in a nutshell, biases are judgments or opinions that we make up about people before we really get to know them. And it's a natural human phenomenon. We all have bias. It's partly the way that our brains are wired. And actually we need bias in order to get through the day and to be able to make decisions and things like that. And it's also largely part down to, social conditioning as we're growing up and images that are presented to us in the media and seeing people in positions of power and that kind of thing. Okay, really good. Now, a city like London is diverse. Why do they need diversity and inclusion when the diversity is all around? You walk down the street and there it is. So why do people need training in that, or organizations need training? Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting thing. So getting the balance right between diversity and inclusion, because I say to my clients that they are already diverse. Even if you have an organization that doesn't appear diverse, so you might, organizations might have said to me in the past, we're predominantly a male organization, we're predominantly white, we're predominantly straight, we don't have many people with disabilities working in our organization, we don't think ourselves as diverse. And I often say to them, actually, that's maybe the wrong mindset to start off with, because, diversity is a bit like an iceberg. You can see 10% of the iceberg above the waterline. And these are things that we can see, like somebody's gender or ethnicity or, physical or visible disability. However, there's so much under the waterline. So it could be the type of education background that you had. Whether you grew up in a family where your parents served in the military, for example, whether you're an introvert or extrovert, that is all diversity as well. So the argument that I talk about with my clients is that we need to focus a lot more on inclusion, because actually, if you have an organization that is inclusive culturally, but also process-wise, and the infrastructure of the organization is inclusive, then diversity will naturally follow, because we live in a diverse nation anyway. The diversity is there, but we choose to be inclusive, or we put up barriers to being inclusive, though.
Okay, so the key really is getting the inclusion right, because the diversity already exists, whether it's in Ireland or Britain. We have plenty of diversity.
Diversity is everywhere,
And everywhere, exactly. Now, you mentioned the infrastructure. Can you unpack that a little bit for us? What do you mean by the infrastructure of an organization?
Yeah, so basically, when I talk about infrastructure, it's to do with systems and processes and things like that. And also the other things that businesses do, like the policies that they create and things. So if we look at, we can take a process like the recruitment process. Recruitment is not a particularly inclusive process. It does exclude people. You could look at things like that. If we take unconscious bias, for example, if the managers who are doing the recruitment are not aware of their biases, then they're going to lean on their biases and they're going to make biased decisions. They might end up choosing somebody that's just like them, for example. Or, there's a thing called distance bias. So you actually give extra brownie points to people that you are closer to in terms of time and space. So if you're doing, say, half of your interviews online, like we are today, or half of your interviews in the office, you are more likely to give points to the people that come into your office.
Right.
But, perhaps the best candidate's the person that you met on Skype. So that's an example of some infrastructure stuff.
Yeah. That's really interesting. The other one I've been reading up around a lot is the mini-me syndrome, or the affinity bias, where we tend to hire people like ourselves, who look like ourselves or sound like ourselves. Would you agree with that? Or is that proven?
Absolutely. It is. It's a well-known bias. There's about 140 different types of catalogued cognitive biases that, that I don't know about you, but my memory is not good enough to remember.
No. And I'm not even going to test you on those. No, that's grand. But as long as people are aware that they do exist.
Yeah, and also the Institute of Neuro Leadership have done the hard work for us, and they've created a really useful model called the SEEDS model, which are 5 broad categories of types of bias. So that's similarity, expedience, experience, distance, and safety. And I talk about these 5 different biases with my clients.
Okay, really good. So anyone who's in recruitment should be aware of their own biases, so that when they are recruiting, they're maybe thinking about the decisions that they're making when they're dealing with people.
Yeah, I would argue actually that they need to go beyond awareness. So there's a lot online and about the effectiveness of unconscious bias training. So if I made you aware of your biases, if you went online and did the implicit association test that Harvard have created, and find out that you're biased, in favor of or against a particular group of people, there is an argument out there that suggests that that's not helpful. I did the association test myself, and believe it or not, I am mildly biased against disabled people. And I've got a disability. I've grown up around disability. My brother's got the same condition as me. I've got disabled friends, yet I'm mildly biased against disabled people. What's really interesting is, I'm aware of that, Does that mean that if I'm interviewing a disabled person, that I might be a bit more lenient with them, and perhaps they aren't the best candidate for the job? So actually, the training that I do, for example, is that part A is about just increasing awareness of what bias is and how it occurs, and it is a natural human phenomenon. But part B, which I argue is more important, is that actually people need to take action, but really small bits of action. You don't have to boil the ocean. You can just do really simple things like, we're a lot more prone to making biased decisions when we're working under pressure. So if you can put a bit of time in between making a decision, for example, then that would help de-bias decision making. So it's just small things like that people can do.
Yeah, and you mentioned there, like, you can have a positive bias or a negative bias. Like, I think sometimes when we talk about biases, we presume they're all negative, but it can be, positively predisposed to a particular group of people,
Yeah. And the thing is, we need bias. If we didn't operate with bias, we would really struggle to get through the day. Making simple decisions and completing simple tasks would be excruciatingly slow. We need, our brains operate through shortcuts, and we need those shortcuts to function. Yeah.
Okay. So when you go out to your clients and you're talking about diversity and inclusion, is gender the big one?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's increased up the agenda as well, because the gender pay gap. So particularly, we're now into 2 or 3 years after the first reporting was required. The data is starting to tell a story, and businesses are having to explain that story and explain the gap. And so it's diversity and inclusion has definitely moved up the agenda item. And also, big movements like Me Too and Black Lives Matter, for example, have really increased it up the agenda as well.
Okay, but when we're talking about gender, we can't ignore all the other sections of diversity, because even within gender, surely, whether you're Black or disabled or have a minority family status or something, all of that impacts on the gender gap as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, what we're talking about there is intersectionality.
Yes.
And for instance, I could tick the I'm disabled box, and I'm also gay box. Now, if if there's 2 networking events on the same day, which one do I go to? So
I know.
Yeah, and that's why I do talk to my clients about intersectionality, because I get really frustrated, and I've worked in businesses where they say, "Oh, it's we're doing women in leadership this year." And it's women in leadership, not even the other women in the business. We're doing women in leadership this year. Next year, we're going to do our ethnicity action plan. We may eventually get around to doing disability one day.
Okay, we're way down the list.
Yeah, and people get really demoralized and they feel left out, or part of their identity is ignored, because somebody might say, "Well, hang on a minute, I'm a woman, but I'm also a lesbian." So you're kind of you're appealing to one side of me, but not the other.
Exactly. So this is what intersectionality is. It's all the different sections of diversity, and not, I suppose, making one superior to another or putting one before another, that we are all versions of all of the different types of diversities.
Yeah, and it's acknowledging, and it's respecting, and it's all of the parts of ourselves. And intersectionality changes over time. So I might be talking to a man, and in 5 years' time he may develop a disability. And so intersectionality changes.
Yeah, it's fluid.
Yeah, it's fluid. Yeah,
it's fluid. Okay, I always say we're not one-dimensional. Like, there is many parts to me. Yes, I'm a woman, and yes, I have a disability, but there's a lot more to me than just those 2 aspects that you might be aware of.
Yeah. I mean, some of it's sticks. For example, we're born with our ethnicity, and that that's pretty static. but other bits are fluid. You might be working with a colleague who is a gay man, for example, and is not out at work, and maybe later on in life they do come out, and therefore that part of themselves needs to be acknowledged in the workplace.
Okay. Really good. Toby, everyone's talking about diversity and inclusion at the moment, and I think companies are setting up ERGs, these employee resource groups. They want to do something around diversity and inclusion. Are the ERGs a good place to start?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, ERGs have been around for years. I mean, they were kind of first created in the 60s in the States, particularly around the race movement. They're everywhere. Most big organizations have ERGs, some more than others, and they range from a company having sort of 4 covering things like LGBT, gender, disability, ethnicity. Others have loads, loads, and even if you look at one organization that I work with, for example, has a disability network, but then they also have the stammering network and the blind network and the deaf network and things like that. I think when ERGs are managed well, they're incredibly powerful.
Right.
The key is in managing them well. So ERGs need to be aligned with the overall D&I strategy of an organization. It's very easy for ERGs to get very excited about things and go off and do lots of wonderful things, but then don't link it back to the corporate strategy. Or they certainly don't link in with the other networks. And there is, we've just talked about intersectionality, but there's so much overlap. So if I was running, say, the disability ERG, and I go, well, actually, I want to do something around mentoring disabled people in the workplace, well, maybe the ethnicity ERG would like to do something around mentoring as well. It's something that can be shared. And with that, you get savings and efficiencies and things like that.
Okay, that's really good. And the company that you said has a disability network, and then they actually break it down into stammering and deaf, etc. They must be huge. I mean, like for a small company that only have 1 or 2 people in any one of those groups. So is this a big global company that can do that? And then the networks are transnational?
Yeah, I mean, they are a huge global company. But even in the UK where these networks are based, they have tens of thousands of employees in the UK.
Right, but that's really good positive action and very supportive to those workers. Yeah, I like that.
And the thing is, all organizations of all sizes can create ERGs. There's no rule to say how big or small your network is. You could be a network of 2 if you wanted to. I would argue that actually smaller organizations might be better off creating an inclusion council. So getting a number of employees together to focus on inclusion and working together. They might not be big enough to have separate, diversity networks, but they could certainly do an inclusion council.
Okay. What about disability in Britain? Are people afraid of the word disability? Because I'm hearing a lot of negativity around the word here. I've even had a call from a tech company asking me, is it politically correct to use the word disability? And I'm like, of course it is. It's the word we have in legislation. Yeah. What about in Britain? What's the attitude to the word disability?
I think it's the same. There's a lot of nervousness and anxiety around disability, saying and doing the wrong thing. Quite frankly, people then avoid the situation because they don't want to look stupid, if I'm being brutally honest. And it is a problem. And unfortunately, there is a hierarchy in disability, in diversity, and disability is often at the bottom, at the bottom of the hierarchy.
And I noticed in one of the articles that you wrote that you mentioned the hashtag Diversus article. Do you want to explain about them and Valuable 500 and all of that?
Yeah, so the Valuable 500 is a campaign that was kicked off this year, 2019, at the Davos Summit. A load of business leaders got together, and it's accompanied by a really humorous video that you can get on YouTube. And it is, it's certainly what I've experienced working in businesses. The lip service that organisations play to disability inclusion, organisations not really getting it. And yet, I suppose the argument of the campaign, diverse-ish, is that organisations say, of course, we're diverse, so we value diversity. Of course, we're striving for inclusion. But, we haven't quite got around to disability yet. Or why would disabled people use our services? We're a high-end, luxury brand. These kinds of things, unfortunately, are what businesses are saying.
Yeah, I love that video. It so nails it, doesn't it, Toby?
Oh, I've been in those meetings and I've talked to those individuals. The video is just beautiful.
It's perfect. And they have a number of videos that really sort of, I suppose, monetize as well. They say how much the purple pound is worth to the British economy, like that by businesses ignoring the disability, their customers with disability and the families who have children with disabilities, etc. It's worth billions of pounds.
Yeah. There's so much untapped market and potential out there that businesses are not tapping into. For example, if you're an insurance company and you have an inaccessible website, how is somebody that can't see very well or blind going to buy a premium from you? But that's money that you're leaving on the table. Also, if you look at, say, inclusion of employees, disabled people are underemployed compared to non-disabled people. If you then break that down into different types of disabilities, people on the autism spectrum are, underemployed. Yet, people with autism have skills that we need in the workplace. Yeah. So, if we're not employing autistic people in the workplace, then that's talent that we're leaving on the table.
Right. Yeah. We're ignoring a very diverse and talent pool that has just so much to offer.
Yeah. And with a diverse workforce, your innovation goes up. You get better at making decisions. There's evidence out there that many organizations have conducted, which shows that the more diverse organizations are more profitable. There is a really strong commercial case to be diverse.
Absolutely. Where do we get started? So that's the question that so many organizations, when I talk to them, they're like, where do we start, Claire? All right. Yeah. Do you have any ideas for organizations where they can get started?
Oh, there's so much that's part of the problem, actually. I think organizations get so overwhelmed because there's so much to do, and they think that they have to go out and please everybody. For example, and also organizations are quite tactical. So they'll go, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to do something around International Women's Day, and then we'll do something for Pride, for LGBT. And then we've got the UN Day for disabled people every December. So we need to do something there. And the problem with that approach is it's really tactical. It's and it doesn't really make an impact. I mean, it increases awareness. But actually, the things that you have to be addressed is the organizational culture that needs to be inclusive. And the really, the infrastructure, the processes that you have in the infrastructure. So when I advise clients, so first of all, when clients say to me, God, wherever do I start? I always say, start with your people. Go out and talk to your people, find out from them, what their day-to-day lived experience is like working in your organization. You can do that anonymously through surveys, or if you're able to if you do an annual staff engagement survey, that kind of thing. Get a picture of how inclusive your business is right now. Identify the barriers and obstacles, and then start to remove those barriers and obstacles.
Toby, that is brilliant advice. That is fantastic. Because we all have to start at 101, don't we? Just level 1. Yeah. Because I think there is a lot of good intent out there. People want to do the right thing. But you're dead right. They're overwhelmed. There's so much diversity out there. They don't know where to start. especially when it comes to disability, there's a fear of getting it wrong.
Yeah.
And if they get it wrong, that it'll be all over social media. But we want to take those fears away and hold organizations' hands and say, you can do it and you can do it right. And step by step, but start with your people.
Yeah. Start with your people.
That's brilliant, Toby.
Yeah.
Listen, thank you so much for joining us today on the DisruptAbility Podcast. And I hope we'll talk to you again soon.
I hope so. I hope I can talk to you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Absolutely. Have a great day, Toby. Cheers.
You too. Take care. Thank you.
Slán. Please be advised that this recording does not constitute medical or legal advice.